Welcome everyone, it's March, Luris is gone, and a lot of people are wondering what you're going to do with the modern meta. What are you bringing to FNM? So we decided we're going to ask none other than Andrea Mengucci himself to walk us through the modern meta game. Welcome to Berlin, you're the guest of the month.
Thank you, it's a pleasure to be in Berlin. First time in Berlin, it's going to be great.
I hope so, yes, as well. Listen, you and I have a modern tournament tonight. I don't know what to play. So I thought what we'd do is you said that there's some winners, some losers, but I'll ask you if you could run me through the top 5 decks that you should be playing and how to beat them if you're not playing them already a modern tournament. First of all, you said there's an honorable mention though.
There is. I wrote down my top 5 and I figured there was, some big, a big name missing, and that's the Cascade deck. So that's gonna be my honorable mention. The Cascade decks, whether they are Living End, Crashing Footfalls, or Glimpse for Tomorrow. I think they are a very good and consistent strategy. Cards like Violent Outburst and Charlotte's Agent cascading into those like suspend cards that are oftentimes game winning. And that's a really powerful strategy, very consistent, but it has a weakness, of course. You are a monodimensional deck. So if your opponent is able to disrupt your game plan, either with a Flusterstorm, Chalice of the Void, Void Mirror, or even just simply a counterspell, or if it's Living End, the Soria Lantern, your deck just doesn't really function. So that's definitely a big weakness for this deck, but those decks can be very explosives, and in the case of the Timber Footfalls, really consistent, like they do 10 power on turn 3 very often.
Okay, now let's make it to the actual top 5. The heavy hitters, the reason we're here. What do you think is, now that Luris is gone, going into March, the 5th best placed deck?
I think it's Amulet Titan. I believe Amulet Titan to be a super strong deck. If you're know the deck well enough to know how to sequence once you cast a Titan, how to set up the Titan turn, so how to exactly go Grazer or Dryad, pick up your green card with Summoner's Pact, exactly sequence your bounce lanterns, you can master the deck. It's going to be a very strong deck. Once again though, we're talking about a monodimensional deck, so a deck that only does the thing of putting one 6/6 into play. Yeah, sure, you can be playing with a Cultivator Colossus or Karn as well.
What about Dryad with Valakut?
Exactly, Dryad with Valakut. So you have ways to kill the opponent other than with your Titan, but that's going to be your game plan. That's a deck that wins, with its lands and stuff like that. So if you attack the lands with something like a Blood Moon, for example, the deck is going to have a hard time. And now, of course, you have Boseiju, you have, Foundation Breaker, so you can get rid of the Blood Moon, but it will still slow down the game, especially in game one.
You said if you have Blood Moon game 1?
Yeah. We're gonna get to that later, but that's my pet deck for sure.
Deck.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you're not playing Titan, what then you think is the 4th place best deck to bring in the modern metagame right now?
I would say that Hammer Time, despite losing Lures, it's still a very good deck. It's a deck that can attack the opponent from different ways. So far, I've only talked about these decks that have one plan usually, like the Living End, the Rhinos, or the Titan. They usually have one plan. Whereas Colossus Hammer can attack the opponent in different angles, different areas. You have the super strong, turn 2 11/11 Esper Sentinel attack you, which is really good. Or even kill your opponent if you're lucky enough, but with a turn 1.
You mean you have 2 hammers?
Yeah, if you go turn 1 Sigarda's 8 Ornithopter, 2 hammers, you can kill the opponent on turn 2, but that's obviously a hard thing to do.
But it's nice that people have that draw, that's a possibility, and people have to be warned about it, they have to be careful.
Yeah, if you play a deck, for example, is at Murktide that doesn't have Drawn in the Lock, that doesn't have Fatal Push, it's going to be very scary to tap out with maybe even without a Lightning Bolt against a Sigarda's 8 in play, because you know that your Lightning Bolt might never kill a creature because I can just play a Colossus Hammer in response to it. So it's really hard to play that deck. It feels like Infect back in the days when Infect was great, in which you could always be dead. You pass the turn and you could always die.
So you think this deck is its grind plan is still viable even without Luris?
Exactly. Luris was the 3rd angle. So once you deal with the creature, once you deal with the Urza Saga, that could always go Luris, Colossus Hammer, a keep on lures with Sigarda's aid, and that was another super good line against, again, like Izzet Murktide decks like this that don't have removal spells. So of course the lack of lures now will mean that you can play Sword of Fire and Ice, Nettlecyst, Kadra Complete, maybe that Teferi if you're splashing blue, maybe that like opens up a little bit the options, but of course it's gonna be a weaker deck, and whoever say the opposite is like fooling themselves.
But how do you beat this deck?
Yeah, I think you beat this deck with an high number of cheap interaction, something like Discard Spell, a Fatal Push, Call Against Command, while beating down, while pressuring up, so something like Death Shadow, for example. Grixis Death Shadow used to be the best deck against Colossal Hammer. Now that deck lost a little bit, but we're gonna see later that it's still like a very good deck.
So you said that's the 4th best deck to bring right now. We're getting to the top 3. What do you think if you're going to a Modern Tournament and you just get any deck you want, or it's MTGO and you have a rental system, what's the 3rd best deck in the format right now?
I think it's Grixis Shadow. Grixis Shadow has, we're just at the beginning of Lurrus ban, so we don't really know exactly how to beat Grixis Shadow because, you know, now that you don't have the Lurrus cap anymore, you can play 3 drops, you can play 7 drops, naming Murktide Regent. Grixis Shadow with Murktide Regent recently won a very large modern event on Magic Online, a 400 people PTQ for Murktide Regent. I have tried that list and I did not like Murktide Regent. I think that in a deck without, I mean, it was playing 3 Consider, but in a deck without it makes it harder on the mana base. Now you have to like get double blue on top of, because that deck was basically splashing blue before for Iteration and Drown in the Lock, that's it. Whereas now you're playing a double blue card. So that makes the draws of like only 2 lands pretty clunky. Or even sometimes that Shadow was able to play with 1 land with, you know, a Ragavan here and there, just still getting there. Now I think it puts a little bit big of a burden on the deck. It's trying to play the Izzet Murktide game plan, which was more of a go big deck. Izzet Murktide was able to deploy like Murktide Regent plus Counterspell. But I personally believe that just going, you know, still Kruxa, no Street Raid, no Murktide. I think the Grixis deck was very optimized before that, and I'm not sure that without Lurrus you should really change much.
But it is still hella scary. So if you're facing Grixis Death Shadow, how do you beat it?
Grixis Death Shadow is just not very easy to beat. Card like Ice-Fang Coatl is very good against that deck. Just being able to trade 2 for 1 with any of their creatures is gonna be great, and that's why we're gonna see decks with you know, either band control or 4-color control being so good against the Izzet Murktide or Grixis Shadow. Cards like Ice-Fang Coatl, cards like Solitude, but just like, you know, Red and 6 Teferi, all these like very cheap and very good 2 for 1 are very scary for Grixis Shadow. And personally, I think that Grixis is a deck that suffers Blood Moon. It's another deck that suffers Blood Moon. Like, of course, if they're ahead with like 2 Shadow in play, Blood Moon does nothing. But if you manage to answer their board, you know, not damage them too much, so their Shadow is small, so you can still kill them with their removal spell, a Blood Moon well timed could like completely shut them off of casting black and blue cards.
Now it's interesting that you said this is so strong, yet it's not number 1. Yeah, there's 2 other numbers. Also, I heard you talk about a pet deck. What would you bring number 2? If you're not bringing the top deck, what are you bringing then and why?
Tonight, for example, when we go play Modern, I'll be playing Izzet Murktide, but my list with 2 Blood Moon in the main deck. I believe that that's a very important weapon in the format, because most of the decks that I mentioned so far are either Urza Saga decks or have pretty greedy mana bases. So I think Blood Moon is excellent against the top decks. It's not great in the mirror, of course. So if you're playing against Izzet Murktide, you'd rather be on the Archmage Charm list. But I personally think that Archmage Charm is just not that good of a card that justifies playing a 3-drop in Modern. To play a 3-drop in Modern in a deck with 18 lands, it really needs to be a super powerful card, and I personally don't think that Archmage Charm qualifies, and I'd rather it to be like a Blood Moon, which is just shuts off certain decks like, you know, Amulet Titan, but some draws of the 4-color control can like completely shut them off. So that's the deck that I like to play, Izzet Murktide featuring 2 Blood Moon.
Featuring 2 Blood Moon. And say someone meets you tonight at the FNM, how do they beat you playing Isaac Murktide with 2 Blood Moon?
Well, the mirror match, if you're playing 3 or 4 Arcbite Charm, of course favors the player with Charm over Blood Moon. But I think Isaac Murktide also struggles against what I'll mention next, which is for color control. The Yorion Omnath deck has like very good tools to beat it with. Icepan, Coatl, Solitude, Omnath, Ren and 6 Fear. All these cards are so scary that you need to kill them. But while you unholy heat them, they get a 2-for-1 all the time. And eventually they have a Yorion, so they even access to a companion. Thanks to abundant growth and like a lot of fetch lands, they're able to sometimes even play around your Blood Moon. So especially if they're on the play. So that's a very scary deck for Izzet Murktide for color control.
So you're saying it's, because we haven't spoken about the number 1 slot yet, you're saying this is the deck you bring for color control.
For color control, I think is the best in Modern. It's the best deck in Modern currently. There was a lot of talk that for color control it was already the best deck in Modern before Lura's ban. It was maybe struggling, maybe it was like 49% against Grixis Shadow, so that's what gave Grixis Shadow a little bit of a lead, but it has all the strongest tools, and now it even got March of the Otherworldly Light, which is a very powerful 1-mana removal spell for Urza Saga, as well as being an instant speed card, removal for anything you want. The for color control deck doesn't have weakness, I believe. The only weakness it has, it's greedy mana base. So some games you're just gonna lose because you either take like 7 damage from your dual lands because you don't draw many, so you can't afford to go basic, or you're just on the draw, you have to get a Triumph, so you start too slow and your opponent attacks. Another way that can lose is easily just being on the draw against a Ragavan. Sometimes, if you face a Ragavan deck and you're on the draw with that deck, it's tough. But if you're on the play, you have access to, again, March, Ren and 6.
Do you still run Solitude in that deck?
Yeah, you're on 4 Solitude, super good in that deck, especially if you play with Ephemerate.
So that's it, even Ragavan is not always a solution, because even if turn 1 Ragavan, they're struggling with their lands, they're like Solitude, okay, and build back from there.
Yeah, of course, the 2-for-1 is huge, but that deck has so much card advantage, again, Coatl, Ren and 6, that you'll be able maybe to get back in the card advantage. Omnath is like, if you go Omnath Fetchland on turn 5, you can go easily like, it's a pretty common curve for that deck to go like bring back your companion, and then on turn 3 or 4, and then on turn 5 you go Omnath Fetchland Yorion, and that's like gonna make so much card advantage that you're gonna recoup all the disadvantage that you made earlier.
We talked about the modern metagame. Thank you thank you Andrea Mengucci for all the information. Listen, if you're seeing this on Mengu's channel, you can check us out at Cardmarket. If you're seeing this on the Cardmarket channel, Andrea Mengucci, you know where to find him, Mengucci video.
Andrea Mengucci video on YouTube, twitch.tv/Mengucci on Twitch every morning. That's it.
So please subscribe to him, subscribe to us. If you do, maybe we'll show you other things to do with $50 instead of buying 16 NFTs. But we'll see you in the next video.